Good morning, Breakfast with Bacon fans. My guest today is a real fan of the little flower. No, she's not a gardener. She is the author of a book. Her name is Laraine Bennett, and she has just written a book called The Little Way of Living with Less. And I told her I was going to make her do the tagline, but I'd like to do it. It's learning to let go with the little flower. Laraine Bennett, you are such a blessing to me to have you on the show today. So thank you for coming on A Breakfast with Bacon.
Gosh, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a true pleasure to be here.
You know what made me excited about your book is many things, but I am a natural declutterer. And there are strategies that I have imported in my own life. So when I saw this book, I was like, this is going to be so helpful for so many people, because one of the things I learned, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, is it's so hard to let go of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, big stuff, little stuff, your car. I mean, we had a boat once that had all these memories of our children, but then the kids moved out and we just never went out. And I was like, we donated it to Boat Angel. We've donated cars, clothing. I used to tell my children, just there's poor kids. Why do you wait till your clothing is out of style? Sometimes if you have too much, the poor kids need to have pretty stuff too. So once you get started doing it, it gets easier. So that's enough that I'm going to say. So I want to kind of let you just take it from there. That's just one of the elements in this book. Can you start with wherever you want? But one of the places that I'm considering is, what caused you to write this? Are you a declutterer yourself?
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, I think it's awesome that you're a natural born declutterer, and I am not a natural born declutterer. I had to learn it, kicking and screaming, actually. My mom was, but she didn't teach me the tricks to it. Yeah, it's interesting because I did have to learn it, and it kind of the whole reason that I actually wrote this book, it kind of goes back to a few years ago when we had actually raised our kids, 4 kids. They're now grown up, and in a typical suburban McMansion, one of those way, way, way far away from work, So my husband, we both actually drove an hour and a half each way to get to work. And he was doing it 5 days a week. And I only worked part-time, so I didn't have to. But so we live way, way out there. And one day my husband, Art, he says to me, he goes, Laraine, we only live in 10% of this house. And yet we are spending lots of time and money, repairing it, cleaning it, fixing the leaky roof, fixing the other leaks. There's just endless things that go on with a big house.
Right.
And the kids are gone. They've already grown. They all have their own houses. And he goes, it's really just a very well decorated 4,000 square foot storage unit for our kids.
That's wise though, because that is what it is.
It's crazy. And they didn't even want the stuff, which is what we found out when we decided to sell the house, and we get rid of all the big furniture and all the sentimental things, all the trophies in the basement that belong to the kids. And we're like, do you guys want your trophies? And they're like, no. And we're like, what? We've collected these for years, 20, 30 years of trophies,
Right.
Everybody has the same stuff, tons of clutter. And when you have a big house, you just can
put more room there before you decide it's time to get rid of some of it.
Yeah. So anyway, so I decided to write a book about it because like a bunch of friends said to me, well, hey, I kind of want to do that too, but I actually don't know where to start. And it's kind of a popular topic for discussion nowadays too. Minimalism, downsizing, small living, decluttering, all this stuff. But what I wanted to get at was kind of the spiritual realities underlying these popular trends of minimalism and decluttering and so on. So I wanted to kind of really dive deeply into those aspects. What are the virtues involved and that sort of thing? That's why I wrote the book. And, of course, Saint Thérèse, who better to, when you're talking about small anything, littleness is the little flower. So I wanted to bring in her wisdom.
Well, before we get to her, you
Mhm.
kind of jumped way too far going, wait a
Sorry.
minute, girl. No. You
Sorry.
can't get out of this that easily. So,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to get rid of stuff. Tell me
Oh,
you
yeah.
didn't struggle. I mean, because it's like, okay, I decided to do it and there it was. I'm like,
Oh,
how
no.
big of a house did you buy? A 2,000 square foot? What did you, when you got rid of this 4,000 square foot home,
Yeah.
you got something else. That's a lot of stuff to get rid of. And
Oh.
because I've gone through this process myself. There's some
Mhm.
stuff you're like, but this one, but shouldn't I? I
Mhm.
mean, there's no value. I mean, can you kind of,
Oh,
did you
yeah.
have to go through this process of grieving a little bit before it kind of got easier and
Absolutely. Oh my
easier?
gosh. Yes, you're so right. It's such a process. And um gosh, when I first started out, I was like, I overvalued my stuff, just like most people do. I think they've done psychological studies on this, that people overvalue their own things.
Right.
And so you put something out, for the garage sale, and you put, $5, and everybody's like, oh, I'll give you like 50
50
cents,
cents.
maybe. you know and so it's funny, you kind of realize that so I had to like discover that my stuff was not as valuable to other people as it was to me. And so it was the whole process of putting things on Facebook Marketplace, and we did all the things. There was an app called Offer Up.
Mhm.
And it's kind of clever because it reminded me of our Catholic tradition of offering something up,
I never thought of that
And
until you just said that.
yeah, and so what would happen though is you would put something on it and somebody would like offer you a less amount. And so I would put, oh, look at this wonderful solid wood dresser that my kids used and loved, and I'll put it up here for $100, and they'll go, I'll give you 20. And you're like, 20. Anyway, so throughout this whole process, I really started to, I really actually got into it though, because then I
Yes.
realized, other people need this more than I do. I am actually getting rid of it. And look at this family. They're just starting out. They don't have as much money. All they can afford is maybe $20 for that lovely thing. And we used it for many, many years. So why am I trying to charge so much for it? So I started, everything started getting less and less expensive that we were getting, until we were like giving
We'll
things
pay
away.
you. We'll pay you if you take it.
Yeah. Can you please come and take away this couch? Please, do you need some gas money? Yes.
I just recently did my annual clean out my husband's garage day, and he hates when I do that because he's downstairs, but he's like, I don't have pack rat tendencies. I'm like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. So every year I clean out the garage, and it's not to get rid of stuff mostly at this point. It's just to organize it. But this year we lived in Italy for 2 years. And if you ask my daughters, it was the 2 best years of our lives. It was
Wow.
magnificent. We bought these tapestries in Italy. One was the Last Supper. One was this big, huge tapestry. And we had them framed in Italy before we left. And so we recently redecorated. Well, not recently, 2013, we redecorated, put them in the garage, and they've been in the garage. And you know how it can get molding. So the back of it might start getting a little mold on it. So as I'm cleaning, my husband's like, gonna put this on Offer Up, as a matter of fact, or something else. And he does this a lot. So he makes money, $100 for a washing machine or whatever. But I got to this point where I'm like, and he said, okay, if it's not sold in 2 weeks, I'll get rid of it. But he said the girls might want it. So no one bought it. And my daughters were like, oh, wow, you're not getting rid of that, are you? I said, well, I mean, it's beautiful, but do you want it? I can save it for you. And she's like, well, no, I have no place to put it. And so our grandson's like, Grandma, you can't get rid of that. And he's 16. So, well, do you think you'll use it in your first apartment? You're going to be out in about 2 years. And he's like, well, I don't know. So you realize, Laraine, everybody wants you to keep it.
Right.
But they want it in your house and not their house. And I'm like, my daughter, I said, Gabrielle, you don't want it in your house. You want me to keep it? I said, when I die, what are you going to do with it? She's like, probably give it away. Why don't I just do you the favor? Get rid of it now. And so my husband came back from Wisconsin. He's like, you got rid of the tapestries? I'm like, Anyway, so it's
That's it,
really,
exactly.
yeah. So I'm
You're
gonna
so
go.
right.
You probably experienced that with your own family,
Absolutely.
and now I'll lead more into the book, because are those
Oh,
when you talked about the book, and then connecting with Saint Therese, um, it's that losing of possessions. Like the Lord says, you should be more attached
mhm,
to the Creator than the
mhm.
creation.
Right.
So now I'll kind
Exactly.
of let you go into really your own journey and connecting it with the little flower.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I love your story about living in Italy, because part of our story was that we went to Germany and we lived in Germany for 4 years.
Military
And
family.
yeah, well, we were my husband was a contractor
Got it.
with the
Yes.
army. So yeah, so we lived there on the economy for 4 years. And it's funny because we kind of, I think, and I'm sure you experienced this as well. You do learn to let go a little bit, when you're moving
Yep.
around, and you go someplace so drastically different, and the culture is so different.
Yeah.
And we really learned a lot about detaching from our American ways, the
Correct.
bigger is better and all that kind of stuff, and shopping at all, every hour of the day, anytime you want. In Germany, the stores would be closed at a certain
Hmm.
in the afternoon and in the evening and on Sundays. And
Italy as well.
yes,
It was
exactly.
wonderful.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's a
It
lovely
forces you
thing.
to just do what God wanted you to do, which is spend time with Him
Exactly.
and with your family.
I know. It's so true. So we learned all these beautiful lessons, and yet we were so excited to get back to the States. We come back here and we're like, oh, yay, let's buy a big house. And
Let's go unlearn everything we just learned.
we completely dropped our lessons learned. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But your
It's so
faith was
funny.
in this. I mean, so what a beautiful thing that you take this very temporal
Mhm.
lesson, and the Lord spoke to you the whole time, and you
Yeah.
saw one of His favorites, one of His saints. You
Oh,
saw
yeah.
those lessons. So kind of tell
Well,
me how you decided to
yeah.
connect those two. Were you connecting him as you were pulling things out of the house and get rid of it? Or was that
No,
something after you sat down to write the book, you went, my goodness.
yeah, it was more, yeah, I started writing the book, and going into my own experiences and also other people's experiences. So it's not just about our own experiences with decluttering and letting go and
Right.
that sort of thing. We also have stories about younger people, younger families, and that sort of thing. But I started really wanted to examine the virtues, so some of the virtues underlying this are detachment and trust and simplicity and gratitude and poverty of spirit. And it's like, wait, these are all virtues that the little flower, Saint Therese of Lisieux, she practiced, to the nth degree. Like she practiced heroic virtue. She's amazing. And so I started to reread her story of a soul. So I had read it before, actually a couple times. And then like the third time I'm reading it, I realized, she is even more profound than I thought she was. And the more you read her, the more you realize the depth of her insight. And it's
Yeah.
just so incredible. So I thought I just have to incorporate the wisdom of Saint Therese into this as well. And the thing that's so interesting about her is that she was raised in a middle class family. She's a saint for the modern world. Like I think it was Pope Pius X said she was the greatest modern saint. And she was born in 1873, but she lived in her parents were working. They were middle class, or so to speak, but they actually were upper middle class, I would say. They had a beautiful home. Just they weren't wanting for anything. And I think they had servants even, but they weren't like nobility or anything like that, because her mom was a lace maker, dad was a watchmaker. And so anyway, so she was raised in comfort and
Mhm.
beautiful things, and she understood the same attraction that we all have for beautiful things, for middle class values, that kind of thing. And
Right.
yet she knew at a very young age, like she's just amazing, that she knew that she didn't want to be sucked into that. And she knew she didn't want to let material possessions guide her or a comfortable life. She wanted, from the very beginning, the earliest age that she, that she even thought about it, she wanted to be a saint. And so she just was just so focused on this. And so that's why I included Saint Thérèse. I mean, turned to her actually in this book to for guidance and wisdom. And let's see, I'm not sure. Did I answer your question?
You sure did, because
so.
The title of your book again is The Little Way, the little way of living with less. And that's exactly what her theme was her whole life.
Yeah.
And, I think so many people, Laraine, and you probably experience this as well. They see the saints and they think, oh, I could never be. I mean, like they were magical or they were just born with something special. So when you can make this application to she's just another human being, and the beauty of doing what she did is so, as you just said, is just so much bigger and so much more fruitful. Did decluttering, did simplifying, did getting rid of this draw you closer to God?
Well, I sure hope so. Yeah. I mean, that was kind of one of the guiding motivations for me, was that I did want us to become less attached to our material things. And also in the discussion of detachment, of course, I talk about detaching from material things, but also from our own our own habits or our own other attachments that are more spiritual, you might say, or like being attached to security, or you think, well, yes, okay, I can get rid of some of these things, but I'm not going to get rid of my, IRA or something, what are you talking about? But, it's not that I'm not saying that you have to do that, but we need to have an internal detachment from those things, in the sense that we are not putting those as the number one in our life. So I think you had a guest on, I noticed earlier, I listened to one of your podcasts where they were talking about idols. Your guest was examining the various idols that we have in our life. We don't realize we do, but it's like it's that internal attachment to other things. Yeah. And it could be, or it could be prestige, or it could be, I'm attached to what other people think about me, or I'm attached to, there's so many things that we put in place, and it's so sneaky, because these things start becoming more important to us than God is. And we don't intend for that either. And it's rather alarming. It's like I use the example of Gollum, where he's wearing the ring, and he becomes this horrible, slimy, horrible creature in the dark, and and all he's attached to is his ring, is precious. But we let our possessions start to possess us as well. So we have to maintain that inner detachment. And we might think, oh, well, I've gotten rid of, okay, maybe I'm not so attached anymore to material things, but I'm still attached to my pride, or my control, or my
grandchildren. My children.
My children, my grandchildren.
Like I would rather. So you're leading me into, there's 3 specific seasons of my life that you just reminded me of. When we did live in Italy, I had never been out of this country before, never to Mexico or Canada. And so when I got off that airplane and I was 30 years old, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in Italy. I'm in Italy. I'm in Europe. And everything was great. And I wanted to eat all the pastries and drink all the cappuccinos and taste all the wine. And I just wanted to do it. And it was wonderful. And I praised God. Yeah. But there came a point, I remember I was in this pasticceria, right? I'm looking at this pastry shop, and I'm looking at everything in the window. And I remembered asking the Lord specifically, Laraine said, Lord, help take the shiny off of this. Just stop. I'm asking you to help me look at and never let it shine again. Because I didn't realize that it's exactly what you're talking about.
Actually, Saint Thérèse said the same thing.
Oh, did she?
Yes, you're practically quoting her. I mean, I quoted in the book, but I won't be able to say it, in her words, but it's exactly that. She said she discovered that she didn't want to be attracted to all that glitters. And she called that, the
Yeah.
same
Well, that
thing.
is wonderful. Then the
Yeah.
second thing you said, so God is really refining me because I have to go through these stages. So I taught financial classes for many years. That's how I got my career as a speaker. And so as a financial educator, and I would teach people about saving and investing and retirements and stuff. And when I left that job and I became self-employed, we had to start using my savings account. I was like, no, you should never use your long-term savings. I taught that. And then, oh my gosh, I'll never take out of my mutual funds. And then I took out of my mutual funds. It's like, and then I'll never take out of my 401k. But when you're self-employed, and I had to start stripping and stripping and stripping and going down, I went against the worldly principles. And I had to start. And what this really was this act of trusting God. And what you're saying, stripping this away. And the phrase the Lord has put in my head that has remained there to this day is, Jesus is my savings account. I may not have what I think I need for retirement, but Jesus will make sure I have food on my table and a roof over my head. And that was transformative. And it reminds me of what you're talking about.
This is exactly it. This is exactly right. This is exactly what we're talking about. And that's what Saint Thérèse was talking about too. That incredible trust that she had in God. And she actually did give up everything because she went into the convent, but then she continued to go even further and try to detach herself from really anything other than the love of God. And even the nuns in the convent didn't realize what she was, or they didn't know at all what she was doing, because she didn't want them to know how much she was suffering inside. She wanted to present this like happy, this joyful exterior, but it was actually really hard for her because she, some of these nuns were just like, they had like real quirky personalities, and some of them were not very nice to her. There was one that called her a clumsy goat, and because she had come from an upper middle class home, she didn't know how to do stuff like, sweep the floors and stuff. And she entered the convent at 15, and so they were kind of like, who's this little kid here who doesn't even know how to sweep the floor, and now, she's going to be useless. And but she was always dutifully trying and struggling to do that. But what internally she was trying to present that a very joyful exterior, and not allow, and not ever like judge harshly or criticize or be uncharitable toward any of those nuns who would be uncharitable to her. And she in turn just flipped it, and she did just the opposite. She would go out of her way to be extra kind and helpful to the most obnoxious person there, and so that's kind of like that detachment. She went even further. She detached from her own, her own opinions, her own thoughts, her own, that, or her own feelings. And she even said one time that, like, she had expressed an idea, a spiritual insight to one of the fellow nuns. And she said, she overheard the nun tell the same idea to another nun, and saying it was her own idea, right? And Thérèse goes, here's another opportunity to just detach, and it was just so beautiful that she wouldn't even, like, that's okay. The thought came freely to me from God. It's all a gift from God. And I'm just going to let them share it. It's okay.
What
it's
great lessons, all from decluttering your house.
I know, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is so, it's really a profound book though, the way you're.
That's sweet. But anyway, it's true. Like, these are all the things you think about when you're trying to detach from many things, So
yes. Have you ever prayed the humility prayer?
Yes, the prayer of humility. I think
it is so hard to pray. I couldn't, the first time I prayed it, I cried because I
Oh,
realized everything in it was everything I wasn't. Help
oh,
others to be loved and I
oh,
go
yes,
unloved. Help others to be noticed and I go
right.
unnoticed.
Exactly. That's
Help
right.
others to be praised and I set aside. I was like, I want to be praised. I don't
Yeah,
want
I
to be set
know.
aside. I want to be loved. I want to be
Yeah, that's
noticed. I
right.
want to be I want to be the
Exactly.
one you come to for counsel. So it took me forever. And in
Oh,
that,
it's
and
so true.
the things you're talking about, I know I've read
Mhm.
Faustina's diary. Faustina did similar things. She had a
Yeah.
friendship that she recognized as a sister. She loved visiting this one woman. And all of a sudden it occurred to her, I'm attached to this
Yes.
friendship. And she threw flowers down on the ground. She ran and she apologized to God. I have recognized, Lorraine, that I've had to do similar things. So like
Mm.
started with the saying, take the shiny off the pastries and then the money thing.
Yes.
Then, so I have the standers ministry. Standers are people who are standing for reconciliation while their spouse is cheating on them, leaving them, divorcing them. And these are people saying,
Wow.
I'm married till the day I die. You face a lot of rejection, a lot of
Uh-huh.
insults. People are like, move on.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I am a parent stander. I'm waiting for the reconciliation of my daughter's marriage with
Hmm.
her husband. And you get a lot of persecution with that, but whatever. And the point
Yeah.
I'm bringing up in this is I adore her children and I want to get in their heads and I want them to respect my love of God and I want to, and the Lord was saying, what if I took those grandchildren out of your life? What we standers have realized is
Mm.
our marriages have been our idols. Our children have been
Mm.
our idols. He's like, you could take all my stuff, just don't take
Yeah.
my kids. You can take everything, just not
Hmm.
my grandchildren. And I
Right.
had to get to this place where I'm like, Lord, even if you pull my grandchildren out of my life, I will surrender them to you. So
Hmm.
you have just taken me on this journey of those three places that you had to start small
Hmm.
before you can get to the
Yeah.
bigger.
Exactly.
But to
Exactly.
detach even from those you love most, Lord, if the Lord
Right.
says, I'm going to be taking your children from you
Hmm.
next year, what are you going to say?
Right. Yeah.
What are you going to say? You can,
I
no,
know.
no, no. Or you're going to say, Lord, they're yours. They're not mine.
Yeah,
Not judging, but that's
you're
hard to do,
supposed to
right?
say that. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard. I think you just have to pray that you can. Like, if that happens, God will give
The
you the
grace.
strength and the
Yeah.
grace that you need to get through it. But yeah, I was just reading. Was it? It was one of the prophets in the Old Testament. I think it was. Could have been Ezekiel. I don't know. Anyway, I get them mixed up. I'm not very good with my remembering my scripture, but he was the word of the Lord came to him. I'm going to take the pride of your life tomorrow, and it was his wife. And so God tells him ahead of time he's
I
going to
think
take
that
the
was
pride.
Jeremiah.
Was
I'm
that
not
Jeremiah?
sure.
I don't
I'm not
know.
sure.
Yeah.
Any other case.
Anyway, and he was like, okay, cover your head in sackcloth or whatever you do, and it happened. The next day his wife died. And I was thinking, wow, that was tough. And
Yeah.
yeah, God wants us to be attached to him alone. And it's not because he's trying to make us miserable. No, he wants us to be happy. And this is the way of
Right.
happiness because, and that's part of it is if we look around in the world today, um, you know, we in this first world country, we have so
Wealthy.
much,
Right.
very wealthy, very wealthy. And are we happier than anybody else? No, we're actually getting less and less happy.
Happiness research actually shows the wealthier you are, once you've made it past, back the last time I saw the research data was
Yeah.
about $75,000, right? It's just enough to live and be. After that, you're actually disproportionately unhappy than people who
Gosh.
have less. People in the poverty level are not happy, and people very wealthy
Right.
aren't happy. It's just
Exactly.
people who just have enough are the
Right.
happiest people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the more we accumulate, the more we have these encumbrances, they're like our balls and chains, I think,
Yeah.
that's, I mean, our house was like a metaphor for that, it's like
Yeah.
the big house that is like dragging us down,
Right.
making us
Your
unhappy.
insurance was heavy, and you're
Yeah.
afraid of more stuff that's going to get stolen or broken and all that. It's
Right.
like when you get rid of
Yeah.
it. I have a friend whose greatest fear was having a house fire. She pondered
Mm.
it all the time. And then
Wow.
about 15 years ago, her entire house burned down to the ground. And she said something to the effect of, that needed to happen because now I don't worry about it because my worst nightmare happened and I don't have any pictures to worry about them burning because they're gone. I don't have any clothes. I lost it. You know what
Wow.
I mean?
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
crazy, but that's, I think God allowed it
Mhm.
to happen so she could
Yeah.
just lose that detachment. Let me
Wow.
ask you,
Yeah.
so we've talked a lot about decluttering, but in your book, you also talk about simplifying your life and
Mhm.
managing fear and anxiety.
Mhm.
So how does that connect with simplifying? What are
Oh,
we
well, I
afraid of?
think the example actually that I was discussing in the book was that that clutter actually causes anxiety, because is neuroscience has now discovered that when your eye sees clutter, your brain goes into problem solving mode, and when your brain is in problem solving mode, it you kick in with this adrenaline. So you get this adrenaline rush, which can be perceived, and many people perceive it as anxiety. So in effect, clutter makes us anxious. So
Yes.
yeah. But anyway, that was one
So
of the
lose the clutter,
examples.
lose the anxiety, find more
Mhm.
peace.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But I do talk about other things as well, like the peace that comes from proper order. And again, order is, it's not just about being a neat freak or something, or having a house that's absolutely perfect and nobody can touch anything, like if
Right.
when you have little kids, like our grandkids, I mean, they tear through the house
They're
and
going to
leave.
break stuff.
Oh my gosh, well, stuff is everywhere. It's like, chaos when they're playing, of course. But so I'm not a proponent of like having what some of those perfect houses, where nobody feels like they can walk in and touch
Right.
anything, or children can't live there because it's so perfect. But there is a peace that comes from orderliness and order, and children can understand, they can learn how to put things away in a very simple
Right.
way, and Maria Montessori, she was great at that, teaching even the kids who were poor children running around the streets of Italy, and she could instruct them in her Montessori method. They enjoyed the order and the structure that they learned there. So yeah, so order, I think if we order our homes, I should say, around, Christ being the center of our lives. And then, so once we have that proper order, and we kind of teach the smaller people in our house how to put things away, not anything
Yeah.
drastic, like we don't have
But
to
it
be
gives
like,
them peace because they know
yeah,
there's a place for
exactly.
everything, even if
Yeah,
they're
and a
not
sense of,
naturally neat.
exactly, like chaos doesn't make them feel any more secure then.
Right.
You
Chaos
know?
is of Satan.
Yeah.
Pieces of God. God is orderly. And you
Yes.
look at our society too, Lorraine, how we've disordered everything. We've
Mhm.
disordered how we think. We've
Absolutely.
disordered gender. We've disordered marriage. I'm a strong woman, but for many years, I, told my husband what to do. And when we reordered our marriage to where I truly allowed him to be the head of the house, our marriage got good the ways that I'd always been fighting for all the years
Mhm.
before. So your book, can you hold it up again so people
Oh,
can see?
yes.
It's because it's
Yeah.
already out now. It's the
Yeah.
little way of living with less. It's about more than decluttering your
Yeah.
house. It is
Mhm.
really about simplifying
Yeah.
everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
And ultimately, I think it is about our home. I mean, our homes are important to us,
Mhm.
and um yet they don't have to be, uh they shouldn't be more important than God, of course,
Right.
but we want them to be places of light refreshment and peace. We want people to feel welcome. We want to be able to invite people over.
Yeah.
Sometimes if we're too stressed out about our house and we want it to be too perfect, it's not about perfectionism, because then you don't even invite anybody over. You don't have, because you're so stressed out that your house is, oh, I go, it's a mess. I can't have anybody over. Well, no, but
Right.
then what's the point of a home? It's like, you
Right.
want to be able to have people over. You want to be able to enjoy the company of your, anybody who lives there. You want to
And if
be
they
able to,
spill a drink on your
yes,
yellow
big deal.
carpet,
A yellow card. Yeah,
get a
exactly.
carpet cleaner. you know?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So detach. There you go. You have to let go.
So I have to ask you, does your husband, who originally told you we need to get out of this 4,000 square foot
Mhm.
home, does he get half the royalties?
Have to. Oh yeah, everything, we share everything.
Right, right.
Yeah,
This
of
is
course.
awesome. So before I start pointing people towards where they can get the book, well, actually, let's do that first. And then I got two questions I want to ask you. Where
Okay.
can people get the book? I know that it's published by Sophia Institute. So they can go to www.sophiainstitute.com, right? And they
Exactly.
can type in your, Mhm.
SophiaInstitute.com. That's it exactly. They can get it there.
And you
Yes.
also have a website,
And I do. It's Art and Laraine Bennett.com.
L-A-R,
Yeah, actually that's going to be hard.
L-A-R-A-I-N-E, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's brand new. Our youngest daughter actually designed it. So I'm very proud of her. She's turned into an amazing web designer.
Well, we'll put
Yeah.
both of those links
Yeah.
listed right underneath here. So if people
Oh,
look, they can go and order your book from the Sophia Institute, and also
thank
go to your
you.
website, see what you have. But if you were to say, you want to put this book in the hands of people, who would be like your number one readers? People who are messy? Would it be, I mean, obviously we say everybody should have a copy, but whose life do you want to change most with this book?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Well, I really think that well, I do want to say that it's for both ends of the spectrum in terms of, I think it can be great for young families and also for families like ours where we were downsizing. So I'm hoping that there are some people who are sitting in their big McMansion and
love
planning
that.
to age in place. Because I had a realtor friend, actually, the story is in the book. She said, she goes, why would somebody want to age in place in a giant house out in the, she goes, they should be allowing a young family to come in and live
Aw.
there,
Aw,
and
I
she's a
didn't even
realtor.
think of that.
Yeah, and she's a realtor. So I was like, wow, that's an awesome point. And yeah, so, and in fact, that's what happened when we sold our house. The family that moved in was a young family and they had
Aw.
4 kids, just like we had 4 kids, so it was like, oh, this is so amazing. It's like they can just like fit perfectly in
Did you
this
say,
house.
here's some of my stuff, you can keep it? We're gonna just,
Actually, we did.
did you really? We're gonna
No,
let you
they
have
wa-
what's in that room
Actually,
right
no,
there.
they
'Cause-
wanted so that, yeah. There's a story in our book, in my book, about I called it our 12-foot by 12-foot junk drawer, which was actually the office. And we had like this
12
incredible
foot,
office.
12-foot junk drawer. I
Yeah,
love
it was office furniture. We had amazing office furniture in there, but we had cubbies for everybody. We had file cabinets up the, wazoo, or whatever that expression is. And but it's so funny because it just became a place where we put everything.
Yeah, it's a
We never
storage
sorted
unit, like you
anything.
said.
Yeah, again, and nobody ever studied in the office. Nobody ever worked in the office.
Mm.
It was literally not used. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I would like write books sitting at the counter and in the kitchen. But anyway,
What did your kids say when you decluttered and then told them you were thinking of
actually,
writing a book? What
they
say?
laughed. One of my daughters posted about this. She goes, how mom tricked us. It got rid of all our stuff. She had to sell the house to get rid of all our stuff. She thought it was funny. But she was one of the people who wanted, just like your kids, who wanted all the stuff, but didn't want to
Keep it at her house.
keep it at her house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, every now and then, I'll tell you, Laraine, every now and then I wish I kept more of my kids' first grade homework, like maybe one piece from first grade, second grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Maybe. Yeah.
and that's a maybe,
Yeah,
right?
it's a maybe.
And I look at my grandchildren and they're like, what did mom's like? I'm like, oh yeah, whatever,
Right.
But there is, oh gosh, I am so excited for you for this book, because I think it's going to change lives physically, but I think it's going to change hearts. And that movement you talk about, what you and I can
Mhm.
talk about in a temporal level, like whenever you pack out, you always get
Mhm.
rid of stuff like, I don't want to send that to the new duty station. And then when you move to the new duty station and open those boxes, you're like, I don't want that either. There's no
Right.
place in this new house for it. So we had that advantage of just it's just declutter. And I hope your readers I hope your words were able to just convey to them what your words on air have been brilliant. So I'm sure your book is very good. And the reason I haven't read it is it's not out until now,
Yeah.
so we wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's coming out October 1st, we think.
Yeah, well, hopefully on St. Therese's feast day. But
They can order it now.
Oh, they can order it now. It's ready. It's up for pre-sale. You can go on sophiainstitute.com and you can order it right there, right now. And I did want to say the other part of it, in addition to people like us, like older people, but there's also the younger families, and we relate a story of some younger families who, or in my book, I talk about this, that where they didn't feel pressured to go the route of buying a house right away and trying to move up the ladder and get something big, and where they're making do with less. And so I think sometimes the younger people are even more open to this idea than we were from our generation. So I don't know.
Collect, get that nice vase, fill every corner of your house. Yeah.
Right.
I agree. So I have two questions I always ask people before we go off the air. You're going to be like, where'd they come from? First one is, name one thing. It's not technically a question. Name one thing you'd have our listeners do differently as a result of something they heard today.
Wow. One thing that I would like them to do differently. Well, something that I think from Saint Therese that we would learn, and we didn't exactly talk about it, but she stressed the importance of being grateful. And I think when we're grateful for what we have, then we're less likely to feel either envious of what we don't have, or somebody else who has something, and we're also less attached to the things that we have that are probably not as important, and focus on the gratitude. So I ask everybody to go home or if they are home and they're watching this, just express gratitude for the home you have, just the simple things that are there. You've got running water, you've got, air conditioning or whatever it is, or you've got, this great set of mugs that, make you happy in the morning when you pour your coffee in them, that sort of thing. Just be grateful for the little things. The little flower was grateful for everything. So that would be awesome. One tip.
You're one of several people who, no matter what topic we're talking about, they talk about the value of gratitude. And I think that's universal. Yeah. Be great. I had a friend whose sister was murdered, and he couldn't even get into her house. The police tape was out. His sister was still in the house. And he said, all I did was drop to my knees and praise God, because he didn't know what else to do. And so, just praising God for the time he had
with her. Oh my gosh.
I had another woman very similar. She was on my radio show. Laura Phelps, she's one of the Sandy Hook moms. Laura didn't lose her children, but her one of her dearest friends did. And her dearest friend lost, I don't know how old the child was, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old. I don't remember. And when she found out her child had died, she dropped on her knees and thanked God for the 8 years she had that child. I'm like, so what you're saying is so very powerful. It's not just about us. I thank you. There's power in being grateful in it. For what God gave you. It changes things.
It changes things. Exactly. Yeah.
I have one more thing I always ask, and it's a fill in the blank. When I die, I will know my life has been a success if. Take your time. It is no rush.
When I die, I will know my life has been a success if, I think if I go to heaven as opposed to somewhere
the other place, right?
Yes, if I go to the good place, not the bad place.
It's just that simple.
But I'll take purgatory though.
Yeah.
I mean, but
it's
I just don't want to go to the bad place.
All these decisions are insignificant because they should either lead to heaven or to hell. Make your decision. Will this decision, yelling at my kid for not getting a good grade in school, ultimately, will that stop him or her from getting to heaven? And that made it easier for me to kind of drop my standards. Heaven, hell, does it? Doesn't matter. If she pierces her cheek, Is that going to stop her from getting into heaven? You know, and it's kind of, it was simplicity,
Wow.
simplicity of
Yeah.
thought for me. It was very
That
much
is,
like what you just said.
wow. That's a great question. You,
Yeah, we'd be BFFs if we hung out, you know, if we were
oh
in the
my
same
gosh, I would
state.
love to chat with you more about
Oh,
Italy and all that.
Germany and being
That's,
military. But
yeah.
all of you watching, you just have to be jealous that we lived in
Mm,
Italy and Germany. Yeah.
yeah.
And before I take us off the air, Laraine, is there any final things you wanted to say to our viewers besides get her book?
Well, I just want to say, like, let's all pray to Saint Therese for that same spirit of detachment and poverty of spirit and simplicity that she had, and her incredible tenacious focus on becoming a saint. And
Mm,
she had the goal was always right in the forefront of her mind, and we get so distracted by so many things, and all these things that we get distracted by,
are
um
insignificant.
exactly, as you said earlier. So yeah, that's it.
So I'm going to give you guys marching orders. Please get a copy of this book. If you don't need it for yourself, get it for your child, your college student, for maybe you got a family member who's got pack rat tendencies. You know, getting Laraine Bennett's The Little Way of Living with Less, learning to let go with the little flower. I think this is a gift that could really change lives. It's not just a book for people who like reading. This is one of those books that will, gosh, it can change lives. There is bigger than what we've talked about on the air. Letting go of things is liberating. There's just less in between you and God. And I think this would be a great gift for people for their faith journey, as well as their, you know, their homes, their marriages. What do you think?
That's great.
Of
That's
course you think,
awesome.
because you wrote it. Of course you
Yeah.
think so.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh,
That
you're
was so
welcome. So
nice.
all of you, you're probably watching this show on one of the social media places that we posted. Go ahead though and go to my website, breakfastwithbacon.com. You can find the show posted there as well. And you can find a lot of great podcasts. I have been so blessed to get amazing guests on my show. Go take a look. And we talk about some heavy topics. I even got censored for one of my topics. It's pretty awesome because now I'm part of the club. Right now we are in a
Wow.
war, good against bad, evil,
Mhm.
against heavenly, God against Satan. And we have to start decluttering our brains, our lives, our houses, so we can really focus on doing God's will. Go and look at some of the people who are also fighting for that. I am also saying, go follow me on Rumble and some of the other social media channels. The censorship is real. I'm always putting this plea out at the end of my show to don't wait for passive information to come to you. Go after it. Subscribe to those channels like mine that you may like, so that when they kick us off, and they will, because they don't like truth speakers, you'll be able to get still through our monthly newsletters the information that you need. And speaking of truth speakers, one last thing. On October 8th, my conference, the Disrupting the Culture with Truth conference, is here in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Father Altman is speaking, Abby Johnson, Jesse Romero, Zachary King, the former satanic high wizard who took part in 147 ritual abortions before his massive conversion with a miraculous medal. All these amazing people and more. Oh, and Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano will be making a video appearance. We're so excited. So we'd love to have you register for the conference. Go to truthspeakers.org. Tickets are going fast. I can't believe how quickly the conference is upon us. So tell your friends, tell your family. Laraine, you have been a blessing to me. I pray that your family's blessed, and I pray that this book gets in the hands of many people, because I think they need it.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so lovely speaking with you today.
You as well. We're
Oh,
BFFs after this.
okay.
All right. So I'm going to see if Laraine remembers how we go off the air. I want to make sure you buy her book, The Little Way of Living with Less by Laraine Bennett. Go to sophiainstitute.com. And you can also find her at her website, Art and Laraine. What is it?
artandlarainebennett.com.
.com. But you'll see a link just below the show. So I am Dr. Christine Bacon. You've been watching Breakfast with Bacon. Laraine, see if you can remember this. And I'd like to remind you always to live your life
Sunny side up.
Yes.
Yay.